Hello, I'm Mark Forsyth. I'm the author of books like The Etymologicon, and my new book is A Short History of Drunkenness, How, Why, Where and When Humankind Has Got Merry from the Stone Age to the Present. It's basically about the history of drinking and the cultural changes, the way that you got drunk in ancient Egypt as opposed to the way you got drunk in a Wild West saloon or in a Greek symposium. So I've been doing an awful lot of reading up on drinking and the different ways people have drunk at different times, and I've become something of a connoisseur of the way that writers write about drinking. And one of the greatest writers of all time anyway, but probably the greatest poet of drinking, I've decided, is P.G. Wodehouse. He came up with wonderful, wonderful lines. Lines like tanked to the uvula is an absolute favourite of mine, the uvula being the little bit of skin at the back of the throat. And there's also oiled, boiled, fried, plastered, whiffled and sozzled and blotto, all in one sentence. Indeed, there's been a recent book called Highballs for Breakfast, which is just a compilation of P.G. Wodehouse's great drinking scenes, and there are wonderful, wonderful books like Cocktail Time, or a few quick ones. The list goes on and on and on. Of course, there's the great, great scene in Right Ho Jeeves, where Gussie Fink-Nottle drinks for the first time. He drinks whiskey and then spiked orange juice filled with vodka, I think it is, or gin, and gets utterly, utterly drunk, whiffled, sozzled and blotto, and says, "I could bite a tiger," which is one of my favourite lines for a drinker. Another book I came across which was very, very useful for the studying the history of drinking was Beowulf. There are many translations. This is a beautiful one. And in Beowulf, there's several long descriptions of drinking scenes, and it's basically how the Vikings got drunk, and it therefore gives you something of a picture of what a Viking sumbel, as it was called, or the mead hall drinking feast was like. And it describes how the king would sit down surrounded by his senior nobles, and then on the other tables there would be his warriors. The first round of drinks would be served by the king's wife. The queen would come around with the mead and serve it out with a ladle into everybody's pots. It's not necessarily a perfect historical description, but it gave me an awful lot of the basis for my chapter on Viking drinking and how Vikings got drunk. And it also gives you some idea of how dangerous Viking drinking is, because though it all sounds a bit fun, everybody, getting absolutely sloshed in a jolly Scandinavian way, towards the end of Beowulf, there's a lovely line when he, I'm afraid, spoiler alert, Beowulf dies. The people mourning him say he was such a great man, he was such a wonderful guy, he was a one-off, the kind of guy who never actually killed any of his friends while he was drunk, is the line. And if that's special praise for somebody, imagine how violent a Viking mead hall must have been. And finally, because you have to face up to this, my third pick is going to be Lucky Jim by Kingsley Amis. Wonderful, wonderful comic novel, and also contains, at the beginning of chapter 6, my favourite description ever of a hangover, which I shall read out to you. It's just one paragraph long. It says, "Dixon was alive again. Consciousness was upon him before he could get out of the way. Not for him the slow, gracious wandering from the halls of sleep, but a summary, forcible ejection. He lay sprawled, too wicked to move, spewed like a broken spider crab on the tarry shingle of the morning. The light did him harm, but not as much as looking at things did. He resolved, having done it once, never to move his eyeballs again. A dusty thudding in his head made the scene before him beat like a pulse. His mouth had been used as a latrine by some small creature of the night, and then as its mausoleum. During the night, too, he'd somehow been on a cross-country run and then been expertly beaten up by the secret police. He felt bad." And so those are my three picks for my favourite books about drinking, aside, of course, from my own. Thanks.